Hi and welcome to a brand new Night of the Jumps podcast. I'm your host for this series, Steve Sommerfeld. And this episode we're going to talk about the Night of the Jumps Freestyle of Nations event, which we just had in Berlin last weekend on Friday and Saturday night. It was a huge competition. We had the preview episode about 2 weeks ago, so you probably should have already heard that one. So you would have known we had Danny Torres. He was coming back from retirement. An injury retirement. Luc Ackermann, Kai Haase, they were both out of action for about 6 months in the German team. So that was a pretty big part of the German team to be possibly missing. David Rinaldo filling in, of course. And then we had Team Czech Republic there with Peter Pilat, Matej Cezak, Philip Podmol, and Team Spain with Maikel Melero, Marc Pignol, and as I said, Danny Torres at the start. So it was going to be a big competition. We were always expecting some fireworks, and leading in was probably it was a very interesting lead in. Put it that way. We had all new infrastructure in the back end at Night of the Jumps. So if you've seen the competition already, and now you just want to get a little bit of the behind the scenes update on what's been happening, or if you haven't seen anything at all, spoiler alert, you're going to get some results right now. Yeah, so on that spoiler alert, just stop. Just go and jump on YouTube. We've got the live stream on there. It's on Facebook. Watch the live stream. Watch the highlights. Then come back to this one and find out everything. But leading into this event, all new infrastructure. There's a lot of new processes as well in the back end of Night of the Jumps. This is the 22nd year, possibly going into 23rd. Wait, it started in 2001. 2001 was the very first event of Night of the Jumps. We're now in 2023. Unbelievable that this event series has been going for so long that I watched this when I was young in Australia, dreaming that I could be there to watch it. In the end, I ended up riding it. Now I'm talking about it. 22 years. It has now got to like a multi-generational event where grandfathers basically took their kids and their kids are old enough now to have their own kids. That's a long time to be running a relatively new sport. So Night of the Jumps returned. It was fantastic, but a lot of new things were changing and man, there was so much work to be done. I wish I could have got a lot more interviews done, but yeah, we were busy. We were making sure this event worked and it worked out perfectly. So on Friday night, we had the first competition of the season. You know, obviously the nerves coming in. It's been a while since the riders have been in a tight competition, in a tight arena, with the teams as well. So we didn't know what was really going to happen. And straight away, everything kicked off. We had Matej Cezak, Kai Haase, and Marc Pignol in the very first round. As I said, Kai coming back from injury. We didn't know how good he would be. He'd only been on the bike for 2 weeks, but still in that 2 weeks, it was enough time for him to get big tricks out, like seat grab indie flips. I think he even went for did he go for a lazy boy flip? I think I've almost forgotten. I think there was a lazy boy flip in there, but either way, huge tricks in Kai's run, massive whips. And actually, I would say probably the one trick, if I was Kai, that I would use as his double up was his knack. That knack was awesome. Jeremy McGrath would be absolutely proud of that. So awesome to see from Kai, you know, the old school tricks still looking good. And the big thing, of course, he was on the gas that we were talking about leading into the event. When we had our interview with Kai, he actually said, it almost doesn't matter to go from Suzuki to gas. It's got 2 wheels, it's got an engine, it's got handlebars, and he kind of treated it like that. You could tell he was on a new bike, but this was still the same Kai from the past, even with only 2 weeks training. Marc Pignol looked absolutely fantastic. He came out with a bang, and he finished with a bang. Great run, and then on his double up, he went for the California roll, and unfortunately, a little bit too much pull trying to get back on the bike as he spun around on the body varial, looking for the handlebars. He pulled so hard on the seat grab, the front of the bike just dipped. He couldn't get it back. And a little bit of behind the scenes on that one. In training, he did that, or he planned to do that on the 9-meter radius ramp. So at 23 meters or 75 feet, it's a smoother ramp with a smoother takeoff rather than the shorter 8-meter radius, which is on 21 meters, must be about 69 feet. So he decided to go for the little bit bigger jump, a little bit more air time, smoother takeoff, but he had no run-up. So we actually ended up having to steal a few run-up plates from different parts of the track and put them down and give him as much run-up as possible. I think he was even scrubbing his throttle tube on the wall as he was turning onto the start of the run-up for that ramp. But it just wasn't enough for Mark to get that Callie down. He crashed his brains out, and luckily on that new big airbag landing, he walked away from it. So that was good. And it was cool to see, because with the new landings, he probably wouldn't have gone for that trick if it was on dirt with such little training beforehand. Mark's been busy. He's been doing shows all around Europe, everywhere. He's one of the busier riders, I think, on the tour. So to get home and only have a few weeks training on trying to get that California roll ready for a competition, I think the idea of that landing has already shown that it worked. He was ready to go for it. There could definitely be huge consequences if he stuffed up. I mean, he got hit by the bike. He came out with, I probably assume, very bruised ribs after this weekend. Maybe we'll need to get a photo of those ribs afterwards. So that was an interesting start to the night. And Matej Čezák, great run. Awesome to see the young gun from the Czech Republic throwing down a solid run, very consistent. And actually, if I look here carefully, so Matej won the first round, 56 points, 51 to Kai, and 40 points obviously to Pignol because he crashed on the double up. We then went into the best whip competition. And so those three riders, they came straight back out again. I do have to kind of look because I got a bad memory. I do have to check. Sorry. Those three guys came back out for the best whip competition with one extra rider from each team. But it was those three who ended up going into the final anyway. And I think actually there was a toss-up between David Rinaldo and Kai Haase to go through, and it was the crowd vote to see who would get through to the top. David nearly beat Kai in his hometown to get through for Team Germany. It was close. David had really good whips, and that was actually the best way to start the event, was to see David's attitude in this best whip, and he wanted to win. Like, he had some awesome whips. I would probably have put him through if it was a judged event and I was judging. Probably could have got through. In the end, it was Matej who won, and so that is a joker round that they call it. I think it's a joker round that we'd call it anyway. I don't know. I'm kind of learning new words over here, and they're kind of blending into my English, so I'm really sorry if I completely butchered it. But basically, the best whip and the synchro comp, you want to win those ones. You get 100 points for the team, 80 for second, and 65 for third. So you can kind of leapfrog a little bit if you win those ones. So Matej already won in the first run out of those three riders. He then got the extra bonus points, the 100 points in best whip. So that put the Czech Republic team quite high up in the point standing already. And Matej, I mean, to talk about the best whip, he killed it. It was a nice big whip with Matej's different style, I think you could call it. It's like he goes into this racer whip turn down thing, and then the front drops and he arches his back and he's leaning forward over the handlebars. He's looking back. you just have to watch it. Maybe I'll add a little bit to this video. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, maybe I'll just kind of put it in there. Let's see. Otherwise, again, the highlights are on Night of the Jumps YouTube. You can find it there. Then we went into the second run, or the second round, actually, and that was between David Rinaldo, Philip Podmol, and Danny Torres. So, Danny, it was awesome. It was the return of a legend. The most X-Fighters head-to-head wins ever. The most top 3 results in X-Fighters ever. Danny Torres, he came back from retirement. He did make a couple of small mistakes, and you could see when he was going for, I think it was a double grab flip, and he missed it, so he stayed with the seat grab flip. And then you could tell he was going for the one-hand indie flip, and he left it as a seat grab flip. So there was a little bit too much variation and the mistakes. So he was only down with 50 points, and I think it was Philip Podmol who had 65 points. Solid run from Philip, but David Rinaldo absolutely tore the place apart. 75 points, and actually he had the California roll. He had, I think there was a rock solid flip in that first run as well. Huge ruler flip, huge everything. Everything that David does is big. And you could see the attitude was going to come from the best whip comp. He brought it into his run and absolutely threw down. The surprising part was he only got 75 points out of 100. So at that point, I realized the judges were keeping their points quite low because they still weren't sure what was coming. But I'm like, you've got an X Games gold medalist here. You've got a world champion who's only 75 points out of 100. How much further do you think we're going to go? Like, this is actually kind of crazy. But on another level on that, like another takeaway I would say is it was awesome to see that it wasn't just like 95 points out of 100 or 97 points out of 100. And then the judges only have 3 or 4 points to differentiate the top guys. I actually was impressed to see lower numbers. It might sound strange, but it's not like everyone just goes straight to 90. So what's the point in having the other 90 points or the other 80 points underneath? It was actually good to see the judges using a much bigger range of points that they could give out and divvy up, and I thought it was good. Anyway, so then we went into the synchro competition. Let me just scroll down here. The synchro with Team Czech Republic was with Philip Podmol and Peter Pillart, who took their 65 points. So while Czech Republic won Best Whip and got those bonus, the 100 points, and Mate did well in the first round, very consistent. Unfortunately, they didn't win the synchro comp, and they didn't even get second, so they only got 65 points, which means Team Germany got the 80 and Team Spain actually got the 100 points on top. So it kind of changed the whole format, the whole landscape of where the points were going at the end of this kind of round of synchro going into the final round of competition. Now, I'd say Pillart and Philip rode well together, but they just didn't have the big tricks. Whereas I'd say Melero and Pignol, side by side, the Spaniards ride a lot together. So I'd say they were smoother, they were more on time, and they just had bigger tricks they went for. So that was kind of the easy way for them to win. But the cool part about Kai Haase and David Rinaldo was they probably knew they didn't have the same tricks at all. They have 2 very different riding styles. So they actually mixed it up. And let's say Kai would do a hard attack, Ronaldo would do a heart attack flip. And I would say that's actually better. I love seeing that. It was cool. So then we went into the third and final round of all of the riders who would do 1 single round each. And for Pillart, unfortunately for him, he was up against 2 world champions, Maikel Melero and Luc Ackermann. And he got 61 points, which was awesome to see. The Czech team at that point were very consistent. I think they finished in 4th, 5th, and 6th position, but their points were all very, very close together. So they were consistent, whereas the other teams had, a 1st and an 8th and a 7th and a whatever. So it was all a little bit up and down, whereas Team Czech Republic just kept riding smoothly, nicely. In the end, it was Melero who threw down an awesome run. California roll, of course. And actually, he threw in the 360, or was it a 360? He led with his head over his shoulder, over his left shoulder, and went into what appeared to be a 360. But the bike stayed fairly upright. So it's a tough one. I think it was very much on the border of, was it a 3-0 or was it a whip flip? But he finished that run with the no-handed front flip. Nobody had even jumped the front flip ramp at all in training. Maikel was the first one to do it on his double up, and he threw a no-hander in the middle of it. And he found out that he probably went either a little bit too hard into the ramp. I guess it was too hard because you could see he just got this huge buck, with the rocker mechanism on the old cheetah ramp. And he got the buck and it shot him to the moon. And he's obviously leant forward to initiate the front flip. He wanted to extend the trick, but then as he grabbed back on from his no-hander, you could see he was over-rotating. He was just lucky that he landed at the top of the landing, because I think if he landed even 1 meter further down, he would have over-rotated so hard, he would have been tasting the floor. He would have just taken a bite out of the floor as the first point of contact, I think. So Melero, very lucky on that front flip, and I guess he knew he had to change that for the second night of competition. 70 points for him. Luc Ackermann, 77, with a huge run, including a double backflip, including everything else he does. Massive ruler flips, one of the biggest ruler flips in the game, one of the best 360s in the game, and he only had 77 points. So again, I was a little bit surprised with that. And then when it came down to best trick, it was, the wheels fell off the wagon, unfortunately, for Germany and for Spain, because Luc crashed out on that double backflip. The first jump he went for just a straight flip. The first jump he went for a straight jump, just sizing up the ramp and making sure his speed was good. I don't know, but I assume he was going for a double flip combo. But as he went for the second jump, he just pulled way too hard, overcooked the bad girl, and kind of Superman wheelied off towards the wall and somehow just saved himself. Alejandro Bonifay, the mountain bike rider for Spain, I think he was going for like a backflip tail whip to bounce fronty. And unfortunately for him, he crashed both attempts on that. So actually coming into the best trick competition, it's the last one of the night. It was the closest we'd ever seen all three teams, I think, ever in the history of Freestyle of Nations. Anybody could have won it. And luckily for the Czech Republic, Philip Podmol, smooth as butter, landed his first ever double grab backflip. And it was good. It was a double heart backflip, landed it clean. So him and Richard Zelinka on the scooter, the very first time we had a scooter at Night of the Jumps, and a really good rider as well, they won best trick. So it was 90 points to the Czech team, 72 for Spain, and 56 to Germany, giving the win to, surprise, surprise, Team Czech Republic, Germany in second, and Spain in third. And there was only 40 points the difference. There was only 10% the points difference from bottom to top. And I was actually impressed. I was really impressed because I didn't know what to expect from the scooter rider. He's at such a disadvantage on the roll-in. He's got the vibration and the wobbles coming down. He's going onto a super kick. It's actually the old Night of the Jump super kicker, mesh ripped off flatten out the takeoff, and he loses speed because he's got tiny little wheels. But man, Richard Zelinka killed it. It was awesome to see. So I had a newfound respect for the scooter kids. And it was just a really good competition. So if you might have seen the Riders Lounge podcast that I did about this, it was on my drive home, and I kind of talk about other things as well on that one. But it felt a little bit like Team Czech Republic was just so consistent all night that when Germany fell off and when Spain fell off in best trick, they were okay. Don't worry, they were okay. It was a little bit like when Stephen Bradbury, the Australian ice skater, won gold in 2002 Winter Olympics. When everybody fell off or fell over on the last corner coming into the end of the race, and Bradbury was still there. He was consistent all race, and he took the win. And I would say the Germans and the Spaniards were going for big tricks, but with big tricks comes big risk, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. On the second night, though, I think Team Czech Republic decided, you know what, we didn't risk an awful lot last night, and we won. Let's just, let's be a little bit more free. Let's go for it. Let's show this German crowd what we can do. And unfortunately for Czech, it didn't go so well on the second night. So if I double check the points over here, in the very first run, it was the same riders again, Pignol, Mate, and Kai Haase. Mate rode well again, very consistent in the first run, but this time Kai was looking much, much better. He ended up with the 61 points over 59 to Mate and 47 to Marc Pignol. We then went into the whip comp. This is where things got interesting very quickly. Here I am banging around microphones. Are you all right there? Yeah, you can hear me. So as we went into the best whip competition, Mate Cezak, he won last night, or the night before, whatever. He was going for another win. Unfortunately, his KTM 300 decided it wasn't going to go for the win, and it just wanted to finish the night by pooping in the bed and shooting the top out of that piston through the cylinder, and that was it. So as Mate was coming in, I think it was in the second round of best whip, upside down, inside out, back to front, and the 300 just let go. There was coolant flying everywhere, petrol and oil. It was an explosion, to say the very, very least. And they actually found a whole bunch of bits of metal from the cylinder, the head. I don't know what else they found, but it was strewn everywhere over the floor. It took a little while to clean the place up so nobody would slip over, and, it's like hitting a banana peel in Mario Kart. So Mate Cezak out of the competition. That was basically the end of it for Czech Republic there. So he ended up with 65 points. For Team Spain, Marc Pignol had a good he had a good whip. He had a good whip, but it wasn't good enough to beat Kai Haase or David Rinaldo, because both of those guys ended up being in the final. And again, it was so close between Rinaldo and Kai in the final, but Kai took it on the second night for the full 100 points for Team Germany and the 80 points for Marc Pignol. So at this point, Kai has now won the first round. He then won the best whip comp. So Germany's already looking pretty good, and on the back of Kai. Similar to what happened on day one. It was on the back of Mate Cezak, and everybody feeling pretty good. As they went into the second round of freestyle motocross runs, again, everybody gets one run, 7 jumps, plus you double up. Danny Torres, this time looking much, much cleaner. The competition the night before, it was the first time he came back from retirement in competition, maybe a little bit of nerves. He was looking much, much better on the second night, but still it just wasn't good enough to get past Philip Podmol, who's looking good. He's the young guy. He's the younger brother of Libor, and he's got a whole bag of new tricks that he wants to unleash. So Philip was looking pretty good with 68 points over Danny and 50, but David Rinaldo now finally, we were seeing points over the 77 of Luc Ackermann the night before. 79 points for Rinaldo. Huge run. Again, the rock solid flip looking even bigger, looking even better. It was fantastic to see. David going big. We then went into the synchro comp, and this is where it became kind of the circus, and it was fun. Philip again and Pillar, they rode well, rode smooth, but just not enough to get past Pignol and Melero. So 65 points again for the Czech team. Melero and Pignol looked good. They were smooth, but not exactly on time this time. But actually it was all about Kai Haza and David Rinaldo. And if there was ever to have any rules to be broken, they broke them, but nobody cared. So every team has 2 rounds. So they do synchro one way, train back. Synchro the other way, train back. Normally you stop. No, not these guys. They kept riding. They must have done about 10 rounds. The flaggies were trying to get them off the track. It was enough, get off, we're done. They kept going. The crowd was going wild. Everybody was going wild. We saw awesome synchro tricks. And it was just fun to see these 2 guys enjoying their time at a competition. It felt almost more like just a regular show where they didn't give 2 craps what any judges thought. They didn't care what the flaggies thought. They just kept riding. They could have just sat there with the lights, like flicking the lights on and off to get these guys out of the way. They would have kept going. And actually, let's backtrack a little bit. In David's run in round 2, he actually did that. He finished his run. The lights went out. David did 2 more jumps in the pitch black. It was awesome. Very dangerous, but it was awesome to see. So that was the win again for Team Germany in the synchro comp. Then it was the 3rd round. And unfortunately, again, for Pilat, he was up against those 2 world champions. He's a European champion too. Don't get that wrong. Pilat is a European champion in his own right, but 67 points to Pilat with some unbelievable tricks in his run, especially, I think, was it in his run that he did the side saddle takeoff, side saddle all the way through to side saddle lander? It was either in his run or it was in best trick. Oh, it's been a long week, so I do apologize if I've forgotten that one. 67 to him, 77 to Melero. This time, not taking his hands off on the front flip, just trying to play it a little bit safer so he didn't get that real kick in the backside, and he just wanted to go home in one piece. The 360 backflip whip attempt, whatever it was just not as big on the second night as well. You can check out that footage to see what you think. Do you think it was a 360 or do you think it was a whip flip? And of course, finishing with Luc Ackermann on 82 points, finally cracking the 80s with, again, a massive run. Same tricks as before, just bigger, just better. That is Luc Ackermann. So as we went into the best trick competition, the Czech team, who had such a good night on day 1, it all just didn't work on the second day, unfortunately for them. And I think it would be summed up the best with Philip Podmol coming in for his best trick attempt, choosing the ramp that he chose. I knew what he was going for. He went straight towards the super kicker. So he was going for a double flip, and this would have been his first ever double flip at Night of the Jumps in an FMX competition with us. And he just got way too throttle happy, and he came into the ramp too hot. As he went for the pull, it just didn't work. I guess he would have G'd out at the wrong time and he would have pulled at the wrong time. He got the first rotation around quite slow, and at the peak of the jump, at the very top, he looked down, spotted his landing and knew this was not going to happen, and he threw the bike away. So again, luckily for him, that big airbag just took the impact because he pin dropped. That could have been 2 broken feet, probably 2 broken legs, and he managed to walk away. He was battered and bruised, but he walked away, and that's the most important thing. So the Czech Republic team only got the it was 72 points in the end with Richard Zelinka throwing down on the scooters, but that wasn't enough for them. Alejandro Bonifay, he went for a double backy into a front flip bounce and he landed it. So on the second night, looking much better, went for a trick that was probably a little bit easier to land on that bounce rather than going for the backflip, tail whip. Everything's crossed up. He kept it all a little bit nicer and tidier. Melero, keeping it kind of simple, ruler flipping through. I probably expected something a little bit bigger from Melero, to be honest, but maybe he was just looking for consistency. And it was best trick from the German team to get 95 points with Nico Schultz throwing down on the mountain bike. But it was also David Rinaldo with the California roll. He did do a rock solid flip, but that one was not counted because obviously Luc was there. So he did an extra jump just for the crowd, just because he wanted to. Again, third time, breaking the rules. Could have disqualified him, but you know what? We let him go. But that was obviously just for the crowd and having fun. Luc Ackermann came out, landed the double flip on the second night, and that was more than enough for the Germans to win with 517 to 427. So 90 points difference on the second night, and Czech Republic in 396 in third place. So Czech Republic won the first night, Germany on the second night. Big surprises, a lot of big crashes. Everybody walked away, and that's the most important thing, was everybody walked away. And at the end of 2 nights of competition, with the World Tour ranking for 2023, Luc Ackermann, 2 wins, sitting with a perfect 40 points. Rinaldo, 2 seconds with 36 points, so he's sitting in second overall. Melero in third overall with 32 points. Then Philip Podmol, Peter Pillard, Matej Cezak, and tied for 6th right now throughout the series is Matej Cezak, Kai Haas, and Danny Torres. And in 9th position is Mark Pignol. And we will talk about this world ranking a little bit more in the next few weeks. But just to let you know, that is the world ranking after 2 events. So we have the Freestyle of Nations, the teams competition that everybody comes to watch in the arena. But what all the riders want to know is, who's the best rider at the end of 2023?